I just came in from outside. The temperature in Tucson today is supposed to be 109, 112 tomorrow. And but in spite of that, the legume trees are doing amazingly well. And this one here is my Texas Ebony. So what I do a lot of times is take photos with my iPhone and I flip it over to my iPad, and you can really see really nice details here. Here's a seed pod from last season. But you see these flowers, really cool. So it's got these little white puffs all around. And I thought I would paint this one. I like it because they're usually, all of these are in a cluster and they all bloom at once, but these you can see the individual flowers. So this is an individual flower actually, and you can see the stamens coming out. So I thought that'd be pretty cool. So I brought this inside because it's 11 o'clock and it's already 100 degrees. So I am not going to stand out there and paint. And it's actually even hot in my studio. But I'm going to do it in here. So I have this up to the side where I can look at it. What I'm using is Strathmore Tone mixed media paper. And then for my palette, I have a metal clipboard. And I put another piece of the same paper I'm doing. And then I also put a piece of clear plastic. That way I can see my color and it matches. It's this stuff, transparency film. So what I do is, it really helps if your palette is the same color as whatever surface you're working on. In this case, it's the tan. So I use the tan paper. If I was using gray paper, I'd switch it out to this one and put the clear plastic on top. I also have a little, it's just a lid with a magnet on it so I can clip it on here. It won't wiggle around while I'm painting. So the paints are, I'm using this Liquitex Acrylic Gouache, which is really amazing paint. It's my favorite now. This is the main thing I use. So we're going to use white, burnt umber, I'm sorry, that's black, burnt umber, white, green, emerald green, and cad-free yellow light. So I think I'll do the entire painting with black and white and these three colors. So let's get going. All right, I got my colors put out here. I try to do a long stripe of the main colors I'm going to be using, especially white. And the reason for that is, instead of a blob like these, the white I'm going to be sampling it at various times through the painting, and I don't want it contaminated with a different color. So if you do it this way, you can always grab a clean area, an uncontaminated pure white. Same with this brown here. So first of all, I'm going to do sort of, since the overall tone of this is green, let's do a sort of a muted, warm green background. That's pretty good, I think. So I've done a little sketch here, and I may lose some of it as I put this background in, but it's all right. Put some darker tones in through here. It's just all kinds of foliage behind it, so I'm just going to keep this pretty loose. You don't want the eyes to focus on this really. This paper is pretty good. It won't pucker up too much. See, I'm mixing basically green, a brown, and I think I used just a touch of black, not too much. It's a basic block in, so that's my big fat brush. I always start with the biggest brush and go down in size as you paint. So next we'll do a little bit of these branches here. So looks like I did lose my lines here. So I'm kind of guessing at where they were. So these are just sort of some of my main lines I'm putting back in. Let's see, we'll do some of this color in here. So this will be a little bit of some background color in here and there. Just a little bit of white in this. I think that's a little too white. Let's make this a little greener and yellower. That looks better. Now this is a sort of a blown up view of this because each leaf is only about this big. This whole flower cluster that's right here is only about so big. Tiny little things. So I'm just indicating some of these leaves here. Just kind of blocking it in very roughly. Once again, just using yellow and green and a little bit of white. All right. Let's put some more stuff in the background here. Actually, some of this blocking I could have done with that larger brush, but that's okay. All right, so that's the block in. All right, got everything blocked in, so now I'm going to start putting in some of the details, but sort of at a block in detail stage, really. And one thing will be these little flower spikes here. So let's see, I did lose my lines, so I'm just gonna kind of block in. So this part of the painting right here is basically the focus of the whole painting. So what we're going to do is add a little more contrast here. So it's actually already pretty good contrast between the foreground and the background, but so I'm not going to do all the detail yet, because I'm going to put probably a little bit more dark in here. That way, wherever you have the most contrast in a painting or in real life, that's where your eye is going to go. So since we want this to be the focal point, I'll keep that in mind, and I'll add some darks behind here. So I'm not really adding the final level of detail in these flower spikes here. So this is a very yellowy, warm green right in here. This is the sepals here I'm doing right now. And then there's another cluster right over here. So the darker part of it, the paint's still wet. Got a little bit on my hand here. So do the darker part of this pod here. It's got a branch of leaves coming in front of it. It's going to get lighter here. All right, that's enough for that, because I'm just wanting to indicate it right now. Now I'm going to come back to this stem. So this stem here is more yellow. Maybe these little buds right here, they haven't opened yet. So on this one, it's a big cluster, and usually they kind of open all at the same time, or right in sequence, one right after another. But sometimes, like this one, for some reason, it's kind of delayed, which is why I thought it was a little more interesting to paint. Because it hasn't all opened, and as you get closer to the ones that are opening, they get greener here. All right, that's enough detail. I'm really just, at this point, making a little kind of a road map to follow for when we do more detail. Okay. Do a little bit of darks here. So it looks like this part of the branch here where these come out of is a fairly dark area. So I mixed black and the my brown, and the brown I'm using is burnt umber, which is pretty much a staple. Most nature painting stuff, a lot of umbers. Burnt umber is probably the basis of a whole lot of my paintings. So that's for that branch there. And then it looks like there's some colors in the background back in here, value I should say. So this background, what we do, my general rule for painting in nature, 90% of the time, the shadow areas and the some of the background, especially the shadowy kind of background areas, like I'm painting here, are almost always warm. So I'd never paint this as just black. I would paint a very warm kind of color in here. So these are very warm shadows. So it's mostly the umber with just a touch of black to just darken it a little bit. Like I said, I'm darkening this a little more right around the main focus area, which is right here. So we'll have this pretty contrasty right in here. And if you notice, I'm painting over some of these sepals because I'm going to paint them back over again with the white here in a minute. But for now, we're doing that. I use my finger a lot too as a brush. That's why it's a good idea not to use toxic paints. So I don't use any cadmiums or chromes or any of that usually for that reason. So I get always non-toxic paint. Every once in a while, I'm sitting down, so every once in a while I'll stand up and just kind of get a look here, get a bigger overall look. So there's another branch coming across in here. Just kind of smear that around. So in a painting, where people are going to look at the most is wherever you make them look. And in this case, we're going to make them look at this right here. And we're not going to have them look at this stuff. Although this stuff will be in here, they won't look at it for a couple reasons. One is there won't be high contrast. The contrast between this and this isn't that much. Between this and this is a lot of contrast value-wise. Also, the other thing that draws people's eyes is the amount of sharpness. So this is going to be very sharp in here. See these lines, that's why I kind of smeared them out. They are not going to be sharp at all, so people won't look there. They'll look past them. And it becomes part of the ambient kind of part of the painting here. So working more on the background. It's a little here and there. All right, that's probably good. Like I said, I probably should have stuck with that bigger brush just a while longer. So this has some muted leaves here. Let's make these a little greener, just a little darker. It's probably just a little too much. That's better. These leaves, like I said, are just a few millimeters across here. Pretty small. So just blocking these in. The most important thing in this painting, or any painting I do really, is the values. If you've got the right values, that's the whole painting really. There's that old saying that value does all the work and color gets all the credit. And that is so true. Like if I get the values right in this painting, the colors I could switch out and make all kinds of different colors out of these. But if you get the values wrong, it just won't read at all. So that's the priority. It's getting these values in the right places. Just like your Sunday school teacher told you, you got to have the right values in life. So if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll notice that I use a lot of this same palette here. And the reason I do is because that's what's there in front of me. That's what I'm seeing in nature in front of me right then. So that's the reason I'm doing it. Just doing a few more of these little background leaves here. A little bit of detail in here, not too much. Like I said, we don't want people's eyes going here. We want them to go here. And as far as painterliness, you can do really painterly stuff, especially in the background and stuff. And if you do that, then you can do highly detailed stuff in other areas. So you can totally control where people's eyes are going. Alright, back to this stem here. Now I did get my hands a little bit of paint on them, but this paint actually dries really quick. So it's not really an issue most of the time. So the light's just catching this right here. Just use some of this same warm color right in here. Looks like there might be just a touch of it in here too. Alright, starting to take shape. Let's do the little bit of lighter kind of light that's hitting on that. So I'm just catching right where the light is hitting these little buds that are popping out. Alright, let's paint a little more background, and I'll do this there's some really bright colors right behind this too. So once again, contrast. So I'll get these really bright colored leaves right in here. I think this needs a little more yellow. So these are all just kind of out of focus lights and darks where the light is hitting in various areas through here. Just go ahead and catch it on some of these leaves here. And you can already see where it's starting to take shape. That's about all we'll do down in here. Let's do a little bit up in here. The light's catching the edge of this leaf here, and this one too. And then right in here, light's catching right there. So just yellow, green, and white. Like over the years, I've really simplified my palette. And you know, you'll see a lot of instructional videos and like they put out every single color of paint they have when they're painting, and that's fine. I found that that's just a total waste though. So I just put out the colors I'm going to need, but I always make sure that I have the primary colors on here. And the primaries are a yellow, a red, and a blue. Or in this case, it's a yellow, a green, and a brown. And the brown acts as a red, and the green is my blue, basically. But if you have those color groups, you can paint anything, basically. So I've got another video on just on that. If you're interested in that, check it out. All right, I think that's pretty good for that. Okay, I think that's good enough for most of the background here. Now I'm going to start doing the finer details here. So I'll work on these little stamens and these little white puffs. So down in this area they're a little more shadowy. You see, you have to be careful with black because it really cools things off. Well, I don't want it that cool. So I'm going to have to put quite a bit more of these colors to warm it up here. That's a little too green. I need this a little more neutral. That's pretty good. So this brush here is a number 2. I may be able to finish it with that, even for these little hairs. We'll see. These little fine hair-like lines. But as we come out into the light here, these are going to get lighter and lighter. And cooler actually too. So what I was saying about the shadows being warm colors, in contrast, the light areas where the direct light is hitting it are usually cool. That's a general thing in nature 90% of the time, unless you've got a really warm light source like a sunset or something. And that's about the only time it's not. Otherwise, it's almost always warm shadows, cool highlights. So we got the light just kind of raking this in here. Yeah, I may go down one size brush for these really fine little lines in here. All right, we'll go one more pass over this, but now I'm going to move over here. Got these. Let's see if I have a smaller brush. This is number 1. My number 1 brush. All right, let's see how this does here. Yeah, I think this will work. See, I can get a really fine line at that. And these are very fine. So the amazing thing about these legume trees, and by legumes I mean the bean family, so which is mesquite, palo verdes, in this case Texas ebony, they love the heat. And like I said, it's supposed to be 112 tomorrow. These guys will do great. Doesn't faze them at all. Some of the other plants will suffer. A lot of the non-native ones, even some natives will suffer with this kind of heat. But these legume trees, doesn't faze them. The bushes either. I've got a lot of fairy dusters, which are also a legume, and they just love the heat. As long as you keep them a little hydrated, and they don't even need that much water. But they can't get totally dry. So let's see, this is looking pretty good here. All right, gonna do some more details in here and probably over here, and then just a little bit of detail throughout, and that's gonna be pretty much it. So I'm going to wash out my brush, and then I'm going to come in with some just pure whites here. So like, see, I'm getting the area here. See what I meant about contamination when I was talking about earlier. As I was dragging my brush through here, I contaminated this white. But over here, there's areas of pure white. So get that. We can come in through these, get a few of these, just pick up that pure white here, where the light's hitting that. This paint is getting a little bit gooey as it kind of dries a little bit, so I'm wetting it here. They're basically acrylic paint, so they dry really quick. And sometimes it'll even dry on my palette, but that's why I usually give myself a 1-hour time limit on most of these paintings. If my paint's dried out on the palette, then I'm taking too long. So. And if it does dry out too much, I'll keep one of these little spray bottles you can get from Target for like $1. You can spray it, just kind of wet your palette, just keep it from drying out too much. Sometimes in Tucson it does become an issue when it's super hot and super dry. So just put those little pollen sac dots here. So I mixed a little bit of yellow in these. These do have a touch of yellow in them. And I keep two separate water sources. One, oh, this one's getting contaminated a little bit. I usually try to keep a clean one here on my palette, and then I wash my brush out with a larger one off to the side there, which you can't see. So these are the very lightest ones I'm doing here. And I'll come back in with a few darker ones here and there. Now let's move over to this one here. Let's get some of these tiny little stamens coming out. Happy little stamens. So with this #1 brush, I can get some pretty good detail. So it's better, you know, a classic beginner mistake is going into the details too quick. So details are the very last thing you do. They are the icing on the cake. If you do them too fast, you can really mess the painting up because they're just going to get in your way. All right, those are looking good. Now I'm going to do a little bit of darker stamen areas here. Maybe some of these are coming across. Let's see some of these in here that are a little bit more in shadow. I think you can hear my towies. Well, they're not mine. They live in my yard. They're out and about. They seem to like this heat too. Abert's towies. The bird with, I think, one of the smallest locations in America. Let's do these where the light's catching it, a little more yellow. There we go. So the light's just catching these. Maybe cool it down just a little bit of white. And it's just catching right here. See, that really starts making it pop when you do that. This has just a touch of yellow. And there's just a little bit in here. That's better. So I put a little bit of black in it, and that kind of helped it. And there's a couple of areas right in here where it's right at the base of this that's a little darker. Just put a touch of green in it. Here also. Push these shadows down just a little bit. I think it's a little too light right in here. Let's make this a little thicker. We'll go just a little darker right in here, where these are casting shadows on the other buds here. Okay, I think that's starting to work. Do just a few right in here too. That's looking pretty good. All right, back to a little bit of this background here. So this is working pretty good. Maybe a few darks right in behind this here. Kind of help this one stand out a little bit. We don't want it standing out too much because this is our star right here. This is the main actor. All right, I zoomed in for some final details. So we're mostly going to be working right in here now. Just put some more details right in this area, since this is where we want people to look. Right in here. So let's see, looks like there's some of this color in here. Right in there. The light's catching there. Let's make this a little crisper right here. And then here's these leaves right in front of this one here. So, got that detail there. Just a little bit of this in here, here and there. A little bit here and there. All right, I think we need to come in with some darker greens like in this area. All right, I'm gonna wash this brush out. I think I got a little bit of, there's a little bit of white on my brush, so that kind of messed up what I was doing there. Let's come in with just some brown and green. This is fairly dark, so let's see. This should kind of pull this back down. Yeah, there we go. Yep, that pulls that. I think it should maybe have a little less green. More brown. There we go. So I'm just putting some of these sort of shadowy kind of areas here. And let's reinforce this back in here. This is a background area. Yeah, that helps that to pop a little more there. Now in the original painting it wasn't quite this dark behind it, but I mean the original photo, but I'm darkening it just for contrast because we want these to really pop. Like I said, this is the main actor right here, so by darkening the background around it, it's kind of like putting a spotlight on it, but you got to make it look natural. So as you notice, I'm painting over, I'm losing some of the detail in these, but it's okay, I can come right back over it again. And that's the great thing about gouache, whether acrylic gouache or traditional gouache is that it's opaque. And you can paint back and forth, light over dark, dark over light, however you need to do it. Very versatile medium. You see why artists, especially people doing the natural world, nature studies and stuff, have traditionally used gouache for literally hundreds of years. Let's darken it right around here too. Yeah, so this is really helping this to pop forth more. Oh yeah. Yeah, that helped quite a bit right there. So I'm darkening around here too. I think we should do this one too, just a little bit. This is our supporting actor here. Just put a few darks around. And let's put some really darks right in here. This is where this stem is. There we go. This is helping to push this forward here. Let's do some right in here too. Yeah, it really helps to bring that forward. So in this one I put a little bit of black in it, and just for value, that's really pushing the value more. So the first one I did was good, it was brown, but this black really makes it more contrasty. Let's do some up in here too. Maybe a little bit through here. Okay. So now we got those darks out of the way. I wash my brush really good, because I don't want to, I'm going to go with the lights now, the whites, and I do not want any contamination on it. So I'm getting, at this point, pure white with just, I'm going to put just a touch of yellow in it. I know you can't see the palette right now. And now we're going to redo these lines here. Sometimes on your palette, if your tip of your brush gets a little clunkier, I kind of twirl it on the palette, and it kind of gives it a little point. So that's what I'm doing here. Sort of point your brush for these really fine little hair-like stamens. So this is the final pass here. And there's jets flying over. So these are just the final little stamens here. So this is, at this point, this is just white and yellow. It's just a touch of yellow, really. Mostly white. So these are the ones that are catching the light the most. These stamens that are just catching the light here. There's a couple right down here. Now I'm going to do the little pollen sacs here, right at the end. And for these I put just a touch of yellow and brown along with that white. Because they're just like one step darker than the pure white. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to do the pollen sacs that are just in the shadow, so they're just a shade darker. So these are the shadow ones here. And we're just about done. There they are here, and they're in the shadow, so they kind of make a little bit of they're a darker color because of the way the light's hitting them. Go back over here and do a few of these darker ones. And I think we're about done here. Maybe just put one or two of these. Put a few of these little pointilles of light out here. I think we're done. Just gonna go and put just a little touch of white in a few little areas, just where the light is just catching some of these. I think that's it. All right, so there we have it. Zoom out a little bit. I can zoom in too. And that's it.